Letitia James, the New York Attorney General who went after Donald Trump, looks like she's going to be indicted on mortgage fraud claims.
Just miraculously out of nowhere, there's pallets of bricks that show up. You know, they just so happen to be placed there.
Is it really coordinated, or is it just the same old protest crowds turning up to the same things?
Similar actors in multiple states where it appears they seem to be traveling.
Now, Donald Trump has declared war on left-wing terrorists. He says they're infiltrating the United States, and he says he's going after their funding. Now, there's a fine line between freedom to protest and outright anarchy. But right now, many would argue we are seeing anarchy in American cities. ICE agents shot at, protesters violent. Hopefully, we'll be joined shortly by Congressman Ben Cline, who serves on the House Judiciary Committee. But Christina's still with me. Christina Bobb, Donald Trump had this remarkable summit yesterday where he sort of summoned new media journalists and reporters to sort of lift the lid on violence in America. Ever since the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, the president has been using sort of rhetoric against left-wing Antifas and terrorists. Is he overplaying his hand here, or is there genuinely has America genuinely been infiltrated by a radical left-wing terror group funded, some argue, by hostile states?
Right. I don't think he's overplaying his hand here. I think when you see these protests where just miraculously out of nowhere there's pallets of bricks that show up, they just so happen to be placed there for people to use to throw at buildings, burn down the buildings. You're seeing a lot of violence that appears to be organized and funded. That is absolutely something within the Department of Justice, within the federal government's ability to take head on, especially when you're seeing it in multiple states. You're seeing similar...
But is it really coordinated, or is it just the same old protest crowds turning up to the same things, perhaps with a bit of money to allow them not to go to work?
Well, I do think it appears to be coordinated, but that's obviously for the Department of Justice to determine. But when you have the same MOs in multiple states with similar actors in multiple states where it appears they seem to be traveling from one state to the next with the same type of funding organization, obviously this is an investigation that needs to be done. I'm not trying to make the argument for it, but that is a scenario in which certainly the federal government would have an opportunity to potentially prosecute these actors.
The other thing I want to mention with the Congressman and bring up tonight, he's on the Judiciary Committee, is the, sort of this remarkable story that's broken this week that the Biden White House was spying on the communications and telephone communications of 6 sitting senators, multiple Trump White House officials. Yeah. You literally wrote the book about warfare on Donald Trump. Does this come as a surprise to you?
No, I think it's way more than what has already been revealed, and I'm eagerly awaiting more revelations. So this comes out of the Arctic frost investigation that the FBI had started, and certainly Jack Smith was furthering. But this was basically surveillance of people who were close to Trump. And I believe the Arctic frost that has been revealed so far is about 10, maybe 10 to 12, 6 to 12 Republican senators. Now, I think there's a lot more than that. But one of the questions that I think is interesting is how did Jack Smith's team, or how did the FBI get authority to surveil or get the access to these phone records? Because they either would have needed a grand jury subpoena, they would have needed a judge to sign off on this. I'm guessing they didn't actually have legal authority. We have to see. What did they say?
I mean, that would be remarkable. I mean, we had a former FBI agent on the show last night who said this was potentially is bigger than Watergate.
Yes.
That sounds a little overblown, doesn't it?
I don't think so. I think this was a very coordinated event. I want to see more of what comes out. Like I said, I mean, if it's just these 6 to 12 senators, okay, maybe. But I think it is significantly bigger than this. Having been a Trump attorney myself during this time, seeing my colleagues, the way the Department of Justice was interacting with us at that time, and you're right, this hits right to the middle of the book that I just wrote.
You might have to write another one.
I know, there's probably another one coming. But I do not believe it's limited to this, and I think this is the first string that you pull and it unravels something significantly worse than Watergate.
Breaking tonight news, Letitia James, the New York Attorney General who went after Donald Trump and part of that sustained campaign of lawfare against him when he was in his interregnum, so to speak, looks like she's going to be indicted on mortgage fraud claims. Is this the best use of this administration's time to settle scores when, they won at the ballot box? Do they really need to, to take their leaf out of the Democrats' book and use lawfare to, I thought they were against all that.
Well, I don't see this as settling a score. I am currently a criminal defendant myself, as I sit here. And so there's two ways to end this. The people who have been abusing the system, who have been coming after us, can voluntarily stop and say, you know what, we've gone too far. We agree to not do it anymore. They're not doing that. We're not seeing any remorse, any sense of, yeah, you know, maybe we shouldn't have completely targeted Trump and his associates. They're not doing that. So then the only other way to get them to stop is to show them, hey, we're going to hold you accountable. And so I think this is an effort to stop them, because if
But it does look a little bit like revenge, isn't it? It's, you know, because it's, you know, there was a sustained campaign against Donald Trump in his first administration. Fine, I think we all know that, the Russiagate stuff, all of that, and then there was an attempt after January 2020 to lock him up on various charges, put him down. That obviously is still incredibly sore. The Trump entire family, you know them well, are still pretty annoyed about that. His sons are very, very rarely not on television complaining about it when they are interviewed. And now I just do not think in the minds of American voters this will just look like it's revenge. And is it the right thing to do? Is it not right to sort of take a moral high ground on this stuff and say, look, you know what, we shouldn't be politicising neither side should be politicising our infrastructure and our apparatus of the state, and actually let's call time on it.
He tried to do that in 2016. If you remember, his whole base was chanting, lock her up, lock her up.
He kind of whipped that up himself though, right?
Well, but her email scandal was legitimate. The conservative base was already frustrated with this two-tier system of justice, and they were saying, hey, we want the leaders held accountable too. And he said, no. He did exactly what you're saying. He said, no, I'm going to let the nation heal. That was his words, to heal. And what did they do? They came after him with Russiagate. I mean, they threw everything they had at him. So he learned from 2016, you can't just walk away from this, because if they get another opportunity at power, they're going to make sure that he or his successor, whoever, can never come after them. And so he already tried that approach and it didn't work. And so he tried the carrot in his first term. It didn't work. So now he's onto the sticks.
How much more do you think there is to come? Who do you reckon is next on the list? It's, we had Comey last week. We've had Letitia James tonight, potentially breaking any moment the indictment's going to be unsealed. Who's next?
I think there's a number of people that could come down. I'm very curious about the Russiagate. This is a kind of a fragment from the Comey situation. Tulsi Gabbard's team has released a lot of documents about the intelligence community and how they intentionally changed the intelligence that they knew was wrong. It wasn't legitimate, for the purpose of trying to overthrow the incoming president of the United States, the incoming national security advisor, General Flynn. The intelligence community intentionally lied in order to do that. So personally, I'm very interested to see someone either from that administration or within the intel community. Is
there a risk of backfiring though? Steve Bannon on his shows today was talking about the fact that if the Republicans lose the House in the midterms next year already,
I know, it's close.
Oh, it's nearly small there. Next year's midterms, which time is flying by, there's risk massively backfiring, because the Trump administration is going to be back into being subpoenaed by the House, being hauled before every committee. We'll be able to get into all of that again. Do you think at the moment, if the elections were tomorrow, I think Trump would probably hold the House, well, the Republicans would hold the House, but do you think there's risk backfiring by giving the Democrats carte blanche to just drag him up and impeach him again and again and again?
Well, you've got risk on both sides. You have risks of backfiring, as you just described, but then you also have the risk of not doing enough to the point where nobody's held accountable. And this is quite honestly, I think, what Republicans have been doing, where they say, oh, this is too much of a problem, I'm just going to let it go. And it keeps festering and getting worse and getting worse. So either way, there's risk. And so I think the best thing that the Trump administration can do, which is what they are doing, is just move forward, following the law, trying to prosecute the people who have committed these crimes, trying to set the record straight and get America back on track. I don't want to say without regard to the politics, but without regard to the politics.